What's going on, Los Angeles? What's up, Rams fan? We'll wait for some people to get in here. Going live though to talk about this 41-10 drubbing by the Arizona Cardinals. Only their third win in the Sean McVay era. A lot went wrong. I don't even know if we could say anything went right. Yeah, we're gonna get all into it. We'll just let some people get in here. But Skinny, what's up, man? Happy Sunday. We've been busy all day, and it's a bummer had to end kind of on a negative note. But how you doing?
Yeah. Another weird week in the NFL. A bunch of the NFL contenders, the Super Bowl contenders, taking a loss today. Detroit went down.
Yeah.
49ers went down. Chiefs are down 2 points right now, kind of partway through the fourth quarter. So just really, really fascinating stuff, as always, early on in this NFL calendar.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you expect early in the year, right? Like we don't know who the true contenders are till probably what, week 6 is when you can really say like, all right, we have a good idea of who's the real true contenders.
Yeah, that's probably about right. But yeah, I mean, we got a few weeks before everything, the true colors really come out. Packers win again, or get their first win. So with Malik Willis as quarterback. So,
Yeah.
Seahawks are 2-0. We'll get into, kind of more playoff implications for the Rams. But, who would have thought that 2 weeks into the season, you'd have in the NFC undefeated Buccaneers, undefeated Saints, undefeated Seahawks. And then we'll see how the Eagles do. But I mean, fascinating.
The Saints for sure. I mean, that is they haven't played. Well, Dallas, I would say, based on week 1, Dallas was a pretty good team, and they just blew the doors off them. I mean, it's so funny. Like as a childhood Broncos fan, like their coaching staff is literally like the 2018 Broncos coaching staff. Like they have Clint Kubiak, Joe Woods as their D coordinator. So it's funny how coaches can get regurgitated and just find like newfound success in new situations. Obviously, they were really Joe Woods and Clint Kubiak, who were the OC and DC, were really young, new coaches with the Broncos, and now they're a bit more experienced. But anyway, they might be my biggest surprise. The Chargers, also the other LA team, 2-0. But they've played obviously a very weak opening schedule with the Raiders and Panthers, so I don't think that's as surprising because the opponents. But they've looked good doing it. And
Raiders won today.
Raiders won in Baltimore.
So who knows?
So we have the Ravens 0-2 and our Rams 0-2. That might be more surprising than the Saints and Chargers being 2-0. It might be that the Rams and Ravens are 0-2.
What's fascinating to me is there's this whole industry, and we're part of it. All of this preseason energy put into figuring out, is this draft pick going to mean anything? Is this a free agent signing going to mean anything? Which teams are going to be good? This roster looks good. This one doesn't. All of this, books, hundreds of pages of books published before the season. Week 2, nobody knows. It's out the window.
Nobody knows.
I spent, $30-$40 on the FTN book, and it's like, doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately. Jordan Rodriguez just tweeted that Cooper Kupp is in a walking boot as he leaves the locker room.
Okay. All right. Well, we got 50 people in here. I mean, that's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, that's not ideal. I mean, we definitely did not joke, but we ominously said last week that, not even last week, I think it was during the preseason, like this is starting to feel like 2022. And boy, oh boy, is it ever. And we're only 2 weeks in. So, yeah, let's start with that. We'll get into the game and everyone get your questions in here. What's going on? What up, LA Rams? Thanks for coming, hanging out. What up, Coach Rowe? Hope you're enjoying your day. The only, well, I guess the Chargers too, but I was going to say the only LA team that's had a good weekend is the Trojans, and they were on a bye. But Chargers obviously played great and they won. So, yeah, we'll get into the game. But start with that. Just how this is like just a dumb question, but for discussion. How big of a deal is this Cooper Kupp injury? Like, if he goes on IR, are we looking at just basically this is a year to get the rookies playing experience? Because no Puka Nacua, no Cooper Kupp. The offensive line obviously banged up. Defense we were the only ones, in my opinion, that I think really talked about the defense last week getting exposed a little bit. And boy, oh boy, did they ever today. You don't have Cooper Kupp. I mean, is this even a 5-win team? I'll just start with that.
Well, it really depends on when he comes back. But you know, injuries on top of injuries is just a bad position to be in.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it. One position group, getting decimated, just completely wiping them out. When you talk about two of your most important offensive players going out, I don't even care if the offensive line gets back healthy. If there's no Nakua and there's no Cooper Cup, you know, given what Kyron Williams has done so far, this offense is not going to move without those two guys. Um, I think Calvin's is probably onto something there. We'll if they do trade for somebody or sign somebody or do something like that, we'll have a better understanding of exactly how severe these two injuries really are. Ian Rappaport, I believe, reported this morning that Puka Nakua is going to be out until November, possibly. So
Yeah.
you
And we
know,
know Steve Avila is already going to be out till November.
yeah, yeah. So I predicted that Jordan Whittington would be a starter by the end of the year. And I didn't think it would end up this way, but that prediction it looks like it's going to come true.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, they're the engines. They're the engines to this offense. And we both you and I predicted that they would go over their 8.5 win total. They're and that was powered entirely behind the offense. We were saying this offense had to be top 5, top 10 at the very least, and this defense just had to be good enough to not lose them games. And right now, none of that's true. I mean, the offensive line is in shambles once again. They're not running the ball. Kyron Williams does not look like what he was last season when everything was going right.
Hmm.
And now the passing game is in question. And you got Stafford out there thinking he can pick up a first down with his legs on a third down, looking like an
Mm.
old man out there for sure,
Oh,
stumbling his way to 2 yards short. So,
he-
it's there's not a lot of answers. There's not a lot of answers right now.
yeah, held my breath on that one. Like, oh, great. Now, see, I still don't understand why he was even in that late. I mean, the fact that Kyler Murray was taken out of the game before Matthew Stafford is like, what are we? And I get it. You're a competitor. He doesn't want to come out, but as the head coach, McVay, he's done. Like, if he was injured in any of those even in the fourth, I don't think he should have even played in the fourth quarter. If he got injured in that fourth quarter, we're here, you know, talking about is the season like with Cooper Cup. If Stafford's done, it's for sure moot. I mean, the season's over in week 2, which is
Yeah.
terrible. And so the fact that they're out here, but anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. Um, but no, it's again, this is be not a very probably positive uh live show. I don't think there's a lot we can spin. There's no really ways to spin this. And we've been trying to be very realistic with everyone. And, I don't want to be the I told you so game or pat ourselves in the back, but it was still just mind blowing to me how many Rams content creators and other people out there just glazed over these injuries last week and said this is still a contending football team when we saw what the Lions did against the run defense, especially in overtime. And we know the impact that these injuries would eventually have, especially when NFL teams get film on how these backups play. And obviously, we saw it unfold right before our eyes today in Arizona. Now it's 1 week, not saying this team can't also improve and some of these backups will play better, but you're outgunned. I mean, this is the NFL. This isn't college where you have, 90 scholarship players and sometimes those backups are just itching to get in and they can end up being just as good sometimes. Like the NFL, it's a big drop off and they're not even just going backups. We're seeing third string guys go and not even backups and third strings. Guys are moving positions. I mean, Warren McClendon made his first career start last week at right tackle, and then you're just going to flip him to left tackle this week. I mean, that's asking a lot for a backup player when we've heard Lyman all the time say switching sides is like wiping your ass with a different hand. I mean, it's not just a simple thing of like, okay, I'm just moving from right to left. Like it's a big deal and you need an offseason and you're going to do that in 1 week after a guy made his first actual start, not Rob Havenstein, who's a vet. I mean, there's a lot of questions on this team right now. And again, I don't want to sound super negative, but we always give the benefit of the doubt to McVay and Snead and company, and they deserve that. I mean, they've proven that. But a lot of questions we had about decision making have not been answered. And we can't just sit here and be like, yeah, they know what they're doing. They're smarter than us. I mean, 41-10 of the Cardinals. It didn't play out like that.
Yeah, and I mean to that point, you look at the play calling on third downs. They went 2 for 11 on third down. Um,
Yeah.
and then you fast forward that to fourth downs as well. They turned it over on downs twice. That goal line, that whole sequence of the goal line. I've been very critical of McVay in his red zone play calling, and today was just another example of that. Calls a fade, to Jordan Whittington, I think, or Tyler Johnson, I can't remember, but you know, you're 1 yard away, and you're calling a pass play, and you have to score points at that point. Kicking a field goal, I agree with the decision to be aggressive on fourth down, but they're calling a pass play, and they need to pick up one run, and they got Kyron Williams back there. This guy was the one of the best rushers last year, and they can't. You can't get me 1 yard on a come on, offensive genius. Get me 1 yard. And he's famous for saying they don't have a red zone offense. Well, maybe it's time to start opening up that playbook and get a little binder or a divider in there that says red zone offense, because this is, had they scored on that play, it wouldn't have changed the game, I don't think, but I would have felt a lot better about some of the direction they're going in.
Yeah. And Calvin, as you're saying, and if you've watched this show before, if you haven't, welcome. Thanks for hanging out. But we pound the table every episode about running the rock. And again, today, Kyron Williams, 12 carries. Blake Corum, unless I blinked and missed it, didn't even get in the game until the last series. And he finished with like 8 carries or something, but that was just because they were just ending the game. So you end the game with basically, when the game it was out of hand way before that, but you basically run the ball 12 times. And I get they were down big early because the Cardinals scored at will, which we'll get to the defense here in a bit. But as we've said all along, like when you just abandon the run and become one dimensional, especially with a tattered offensive line where the defense knows they can just pin their ears back and get after you, you're never going to be successful. It's so rare to be successful in that situation. So yeah, it's just another example of why the run game is so important. And again, we've said it too. Like, even if it's not successful, you got to at least continue using it to keep that defense honest. Because if you don't, and they just know you're going to drop back every time, which everyone, the defense, the coaching staff, us watching on TV knew they were, then you have situations where you can't move the ball, you get hurt, you're overusing Cooper Kupp. Like, I was kind of glad that Sanchez on the call like brought that up. Like, Stafford's just forcing the ball to Cooper Kupp, and that's what's kind of leading to his injury when you're forcing the guy to do that. And then Sanchez must have watched our show, because he even said, and guess what? Kupp's utilizing the blocking games. When you're force feeding the ball and you need him to block in the running game, eventually these injuries are just going to start mounting up. And we saw that unfold. So yeah, just I mean, there's a lot of issues, and they were outmanned. So as you know, we'll just keep saying that, relatively healthy Cardinals team outmanned Rams team, but they didn't do themselves any favors on offense with kind of the play calling and decision making, to kind of climb back in that game. So I don't know, any more thoughts on the offense before we jump over the defense, because the real problem was the defense, if we're being honest.
Yeah, no, I guess I would say that, we've talked about this a bunch, is the team build for this was specifically so that they would be able to run the ball like they did in that fantastic 8 game stretch where they almost went undefeated and got
Mm-hmm.
themselves a playoff berth after going 3-6. It just the team build, it just doesn't make any sense to me at this point. And obviously it's been hampered, but Dotson didn't look great. Havenstein didn't look great either. And even when they did rush the ball, as opposed to last week when they rushed the ball, they were actually pretty efficient and successful. They had like one of the best rushing success rates in the league last week. This week they picked up 2.5 yards per attempt. So I mean, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, I guess. and they're getting away from their plan, and I can understand why, but I also think that they got down early enough where they could have just climbed back into that game slowly and methodically, had if McVay felt like the rushing attack had some juice and some teeth behind it, and he just has no confidence in it whatsoever right now. I mean, you mentioned Blake Corum not getting many touches. many people expected him to be 1A and 1B with Kyron Williams.
Mm-hmm.
I think even what was coming out of the Rams camp was that is how it was going to play out. And he's in a doghouse of some sort. He's in a you haven't learned this yet house right now,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And it's the plan isn't coming together.
Yeah. And then just to put into perspective, so last week, because if I'm not saying the Cardinals don't have a good defense, and I think Jonathan Gannon is a great young coach and obviously a great defensive mind who's their head coach. But against Buffalo last week, Arizona had 11 total pressures. Today, 26 pressures against the Rams. Part of that is obviously you're going up against Warren McClendon as a backup, and other backups among the offensive line. But part of that also is play calling and just knowing the pass is coming every play, unfortunately. So, but to their credit, you have to pass the ball more when you're down 21-3 after 3 drives, where Arizona just sliced through this Rams defense at every level. The run game was unstoppable. The passing game was unstoppable. They could not contain Kyler Murray and keep him in the pocket, which is one of our keys to the game, is they could not let him escape because of what he can do with his legs. We saw some amazing plays from him, and sometimes just hats off to him. I mean, he's that good for that reason. That's what makes his game so good, is his ability to do that. But your thoughts on the defense, and we saw it a little bit last week. No one really called it out because it was only 26 points to the Lions, but we saw the run defense give up 160 plus yards. It was like 6 or 7 yards per play or so in that regard. And so we saw semblance of like the fence being leaking last week, and then the floodgates just opened up this week. But your thoughts overall on this defensive performance, and two-part to that, is it fixable at this point?
So first Cardinals offensive drive, run for 16 yards. Kyler Murray scramble for 6 yards. Up the middle for 13 yards, James Conner. And then a pass to James Conner for 2 yards, and then a deep pass to Marvin Harrison for the touchdown. Now, I understand if you're in overtime and you're kind of gassed and you can't keep up and a good rushing team pushes you around. That happens. This is the first drive, and they just got pushed around. Mm-hmm. They knew what they were coming into. The Rams know who James Conner is. They know who Kyler Murray can be when healthy. And it just seemed like they were outmatched. And to boot, this is not the Lions offensive line. And they gave up pressures, but with Kyler Murray back there, that mitigates all sorts of stuff. So, is every week going to be against a guy like Kyler Murray and James Conner? No, but they're, we'll get to playoff chances soon. This team has to win 9 to 10 games, and they have 2 fewer chances to do it now that they've lost to. They still got to get there. So, if you look through that schedule, it's hard to get to 10 games now. So,
yeah,
is it fixable? They have some guys coming back from the IR on the back end, specifically. They wanted Darius Williams. That was the plan. Again, going back to that, Darius Williams to be the starter. He's 31 years old. Is that the most sound plan to go in there with a 31-year-old cornerback? I wouldn't say so. Does Tre'Davious White so far look like his old all-pro self? I wouldn't say so, although he's going up against Jameson Williams and Marvis Harrison Jr., who that's a tough matchup. But what I'm still worried about is pressure up front. They did okay. They did a better job this week than last week, but it didn't affect the game, and that's where the secondary really got exposed. So if they're able to get to the quarterback more and affect the quarterback more, I think they have a chance. But again, you go through that schedule, and now there's more and more quarterbacks that are mobile guys. I mean, Brock Purdy isn't Kyler Murray, but he can get out of there. I mean, if not Patrick Willis, whoever's playing quarterback for Malik Willis, yeah. Malik Willis, both Malik Willis and Jordan Love are highly mobile. So,
and obviously Caleb Williams in between there.
Caleb Williams, yeah, for sure. So there's, given their schedule, that's tough. I mean, even Gardner Minshew, he's better when he's outside the pocket, So fixable is a tougher one to answer because they've gotten rid of some guys. I think a guy like Ernest Jones probably could have helped in this kind of game.
Yep.
Not to stick a finger in a sore wound right now, but he would have been a guy that could have. The missed tackles in this game were egregious.
Yeah.
On Connor, on Kyler Williams as well. So
19 missed tackles per PFF.
Jeez Louise.
19 missed tackles. Yeah.
That you just can't have, and yeah, I sent it to you in a text earlier this week, where all 5 of the Rams backup cornerbacks right now are all rookies. Cam Kinchens is the only one that isn't an undrafted rookie. Like this isn't a great plan. And I sent that to you in the wake of Russ Yeast being released, who was, not like he's not a shutdown corner or Kyle Hamilton as a safety, but did a pretty good job as a good starter. He got replaced by Quentin Lake as the nickel corner, but I don't understand what they're doing on defense. I put some faith in it, and I said I can see what they're doing up front with Verse and Fisk, and I still have question marks about it, but I give it the benefit of the doubt. But now I'm not offering the benefit of the doubt anymore. I mean, they have so much to clean up on that side. I don't even really know where to start. And some of them are self-inflicted wounds, like I was saying, with getting rid of Yeast and Ernest Jones.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's still, we've heard from some that there's a very real reason for that. And I think it was even Whitworth saying going on Twitter, taken to the side, which is great. I love it. But him saying like, you don't know everything. You got to trust this. I still don't get it. He looked pretty healthy today playing for Tennessee, running around out there. Again, what we've speculated is potentially it was just the contract was so far off. It was just never going to happen. But anyway, that's behind us. So we don't even need to get into that more, but yeah, this is not right now a good defense. I mean, we can sit here and say all we want, but Troy Reader and Christian Rosebroom as your 2 starting linebackers, they're going to get exposed sometimes like they did today. Bobby Brown, first time ever starting in the middle, going to get exposed sometimes. I thought Jared Verse looked great again. So that's been a home run pick so far. 3 pressures from him. I thought he looked great. I thought Byron Young played well overall. Again, they weren't able to get a ton of pressure, but I thought he played well overall. But the secondary got cooked. It was just a situation where everything that Arizona dialed up for the most part, they were able to be successful. And a lot of that started, I don't want to keep just belaboring this point, but with the run game. I mean, if you take out Kyler Murray's runs, they still ran the ball 35 times. James Conner by himself had 21 carries, Trey Brenson with 11. Conner averaged 5.8 yards per carry. I mean, they could do nothing to slow him down. It was virtually, we were talking during the game, and I said, if I was the Cardinals, I would just run the ball every time. But then they were able to do it in the air too. And Marvin Harrison Jr. obviously had his breakout performance after only 1 catch last week. And, his 2 touchdowns and the broken play on that when they were, close to the end zone and able to find him for a big gain. So everything, it just was very undisciplined football on defense. That it was not gap sound. Like we said, that all the missed tackles, I say 19 or 16, either way too many missed tackles, broken plays over the top, guys open in space. And so I get it. There's injuries, but everyone has to have a real hard look and say, this is right now with who's on the field. This is not a good football team. Now, again, the season's not over yet. We're not saying that, but when you look at the schedule, so let's look at that now. So they got the Niners next week, then they got the Bears, then they got the Packers, and then their bye. Of those 3 games, we'll see the Bears here tonight in a little bit. Obviously, they got the win in week 1, but that was not a very good offense that was out there. So we'll see what the Bears look like tonight. But those 3 games going into the bye, like, do you feel good about any of those games with this Rams team right now?
Well, I would say 49ers, always a good power running game. Always going to put some yards on the ground there. I don't want to chalk that up as a loss, but that's where we are right now. So I'll just say L. Bears with a highly mobile quarterback that works outside of the pocket and works really well outside of structure. Don't love that. I don't love that. And a good defense as well. Packers, I still have no idea what to think about.
Yeah.
If Love is back by then, I'm going to call that one an L as well.
So
I
potentially,
don't know what else to say. I think the Packers is probably the best. Is probably the most winnable game. I think the Bears is also a winnable game, but this defense has just got to play a lot better, and I'll have a better sense of Caleb after he's got one game in the league so far. So I haven't made up my mind on him. Preseason games, he's looked pretty phenomenal, but that's a whole different story. So what say you?
Yeah, Niners going to be hard. I know they lost today at Minnesota. I think Minnesota is a really underrated team. Great coach. Obviously, the Rams dearly miss Kevin O'Connell, and he rightfully so as a head coach in this league, and proving why with his quarterback resurgence of what Kirk looked like in his system, how Kirk has looked so far with Atlanta. Obviously, only one game in, but how they had some success with backups last year, and obviously Sam Darnold through 2 games. Looking good. And I think that defense with their coordinator, Brian Flores, is a really good defense. So Niners are obviously beatable. Rams, it's a rivalry game, so no matter what. But seeing where this run defense is and seeing what the Niners were able to do against the Jets week 1, they should run for 225 yards against this defense. There's if Kyle Shanahan actually commits to the run, which we know, I talk about all the time how he'll abandon the run too, just like McVay will, and decide to throw it with Brock Purdy when the run's working. So maybe we'll get lucky and that's what they'll do. But if he runs the football, I find it really hard to see this current iteration of the Rams defense being the Niners. The Bears, I can't even assess yet. We'll see after tonight. But it's a great defense in the Bears. If Kupp is out for these next 2 weeks, so no Puka Nacua, no Kupp, it's still going to be tough sledding for this patched up offensive line and this offense. I think the Rams defense might have a better go against their offense, but again, Caleb Williams is great off script. And so it'll look a lot like what Kyler Murray did if they watch that tape. And the Packers, a lot hinges on Jordan Love, but without Jordan Love, they still got to win today. I don't think the Colts are a very good team. The Rams obviously have the potential to be better, but they won an NFL game with their backup quarterback. So that's, I'll just say this. The Rams are a team that can absolutely, Calvin, I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not, but they could rattle 3 wins off. If any team can, I think they're one that has that potential, but we know all the guys on IR are still going to be out for the next, at least the next 2 weeks for sure. So that means Darius Williams at least the next 2 weeks because he's still on IR. So you're not getting any of these guys back on IR against the Niners or Bears. Potentially, you could get a couple back or one back for that Packers game. But if Kupp goes on the IR now, we know Puka Nacua, they're saying November, Steve Avila, November. So they're going to be shorthanded. I would not be shocked if this team's 0-5 in the bye. And then 0-5 is very different than 3-6, like last year when they went in the bye. You go 0-5, you basically can lose one more game the rest of the season, maybe 2. Well, probably 2 because you can go 10-7, and I think make the playoffs with 10 wins. So you basically have 2 games to lose the rest of the stretch after the bye. That is asking a lot, especially when even after the bye, you're looking at potentially 1, 2, 3 or 4 more games without Nacua and Avila because everyone's saying potentially early to mid-November. So it's gonna be tough sledding. Now it's early and this team can do a lot, but it's not with the injuries mounting. It's not looking great. Jimmy Garoppolo will be back next week, though. Hey, his suspension. And Alaric Jackson will be back next week. There you go. That's some positive news.
Yeah, maybe they'll try something different. Put Garoppolo in there, see how that goes out. The official injury was a ankle injury. Not much more than that. He's in a walking boot. Is all the news that we've heard so far. But I just got to get rid of that. Yeah, it's so I was looking into it. They have about a 10% chance of making the playoffs after having gone to 0-2 right now. And
What's that percentage again?
10. Well, between 8 and 11 is what I saw. So
That's
depending on
that's crazy.
yeah.
0-2, 10% chance to make the playoffs. That's nuts.
Yeah, and in the NFC, I think 9 wins could probably get it done. Probably 10 is going to feel a lot better. And there's a lot of time left in the season, but there's some juggernauts left on the schedule. We'll see what the Seahawks is. That's 2 more games, 2 games against the Niners, game against the Jets, the Saints, the Eagles. Patriots are looking good, goodish, I guess. And the Vikings, it's a weird year.
Yeah.
It's so hard to talk about it just because we have 2022 so firmly in our memories, and some of us tried to move on from that memory because 2023 was such a refreshing change,
Yeah.
where everything looked different and the plan looked different, and it manifested in a way that made this team look awesome. But progression is not a linear scale. It's not like teams just get better and better on an upward trajectory game in and game out. This is basically a whole new team. And you got to start thinking about Aaron Donald too. Like
Mhm.
people didn't really want to talk about what the effect was going to be to not have the greatest defensive player of all time on the roster. It turns out it's true. People didn't want to think about all of these rookies that are in starting roles, rookies and second years starting roles on the defensive line. One of the main offenders when it comes to the missed tackles was Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. They combined for 6 of those missed tackles. Kobe Turner added another 2 there. Byron Young, not an offender in that list, but those are rookie mistakes. Those are mistakes of guys going, this worked in college, but James Conner isn't a college back. He's a pro.
Yeah. Yeah. Christian Roseroom led the team with 4 missed tackles, which is, hard to have your starting linebacker leading the team in missed tackles. Um,
I'm gonna
yeah,
I'm
it's
gonna
go
find out
ahead.
how many Ernest Jones missed this week. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. I know. I don't know if we want to see that, but um, yeah, I mean, a lot I think what's most frustrating is that I think last year what was most refreshing, besides just kind of the youth and exuberance, and obviously McVay found a new refreshing take on coaching, but it seemed this team really kind of built an identity last year,
Yeah.
and they built a they've always had a culture. I've never questioned that, but they really built an identity of who they were as a team, and they continued that building somewhat. Again, we didn't agree with all the moves, but in the offseason, that specifically on the offensive line and the offense, that this was going to be, a more gritty pound for pound team, run the football, take some of the pressure off Matthew Stafford. Defensively, we didn't fully understand it with some of the moves they made. And our biggest thing the entire free agency period is like, why are they not adding anyone in the front 7? We know they did some back end stuff. And then obviously they had a really good draft. And I still believe they had a good draft, but we just thought they needed a little more veteran presence on the defensive line. But we seemingly thought they had an identity coming into the season. And through 2 weeks, I have no idea what the identity of this football team is. Um,
Yeah.
and I get you have to attribute some of that to injuries. You're going to change a little bit when you have the mass injuries they've had. But you have to have some semblance of kind of what you want to do. And if you're not getting the right backups to match that, obviously there's going to be a drop off, but you have to have a semblance of kind of your whole roster, all 53 players, so you can keep within that identity. And this again, you mentioned it earlier in the stream. Blake Corum was seen as a huge part of this offense. Didn't see him at all last week. And then McVay comes out and says, yeah, once we had those injuries, we just kind of to throw the game plan out. Sure, I get that. He's a rookie. Don't throw him in that. This week, though, you knew what you had at your disposal. We still didn't see him till the end of the game. We didn't see Ronnie Rivers at all. And so, you know, I know they were starting to pass the ball off because they were down early, but my point is, it's just what is this team's identity? And now going into week 3 against the San Francisco 49ers, what identity will they try to establish, or will they establish one? Because there has to be an identity of a football team for you to start building that success. And so I know it's only 2 games, and I totally agree that the season's not over. I know we sound doom and gloom, but I mean, this thing can be fixed. But again, I've heard a lot of people saying like, well, this team's going to get healthy. These guys are going to come back. But as we just alluded to, if they're 0-5 or 0-6 when these guys do come back, well, there's the season. It's a wrap. Put a bow on it. They have to stack a few games with all these guys out because they're all going to be out 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more games. So how do they stack even 1 or 2 games before the bye and 1 or 2 games after the bye to kind of just stay within that 3-6, 4-7, where then they can climb out of that? Because like I said, if you're 0-5 into the bye, you have 2 losses to even have a shot at the playoff. That's it. So how do they win those with these guys out? Everyone keeps saying, and I'm not saying all the people in this chat, but I see it all over. Well, they're going to get healthy. They're going to get healthy. Guys are going to come back. Yeah, they are, but what's their record going to be when they're back? That's the problem. They're not coming back tomorrow. Cooper Kupp in a walking boot, he could be on IR. That's at least 4 weeks with him out. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's in terms of this game was so hard to watch. I think that's we're coming across pretty negatively. But we've been the guys that have been honest with you. There are some people that get in their feelings and in their fandom about this team and want to just hope for the best and think that everything is from the outside that's affecting this team in a negative way. And we're going to use our brains, we're going to use our eyes, and we're going to look at the numbers. And when you get beat this badly by a team that's probably a 8-win, 7-win team, I'm going to say that's what my guess is for the Cardinals. Good, better than last year, but not, probably not a playoff team.
Yeah.
All things considered, injuries happen to every team. 49ers are missing Christian McCaffrey. Nobody's talking about that because the Minnesota Vikings beat them legitimately, just like the Cardinals beat the Rams legitimately. And you got to come up with answers. And like I was saying about, they knew who James Conner was. They knew who Kyler Murray is. You got to come in prepared for those things. I mean, Sean McVay knows who's down on this team. He knows who he's got in the backfield, and I'm not an established run guy. I'm not we need to hit this many rushes a game to win the game. But, if your offensive line is decimated, Coach Rowe told us this as a person that coaches defensive line, as a person that played defensive line at USC at a high level. It's you got to come in with a different game plan than just passing the ball. And I know that you got behind the 8 ball with those early touchdowns, but there was still plenty of time that you can assert your identity as a rushing team. And that's what their identity was last year. That was the plan heading into this year. Jonah Jackson, super expensive. Left guard, center, we'll find out. Kevin Dotson, super expensive. Rob Havenstein, another expensive guy, but third most expensive offensive line in the league, and you're not running behind it. You're not pushing guys around. You're not asserting your will on Dennis Gardeck. Look at the Cardinals defense. Justin Jones, Roy Lopez, anyone? Roy Lopez. You got Xavier Collins and Kaiser White, and I mean Budda Baker had a fantastic game. Then you got Jalen Thompson, Starling Thompson the fifth. Anybody? Garrett Williams. I mean, these are not
household names.
Yeah. This is the Rams defense of last year. This is what people were saying about the Rams defense last year. And unfortunately they got out schemed and they got outplayed. I mean, Budda Baker on that, one of the first third downs where he willed Cooper Kupp to not get that first down. That really set the tone early on about what this Cardinals defense is all about. And just how much oomph the Rams feel like they have behind their offense. Sean McVay does not believe in this running game right now. He's not going to run the ball. He's not going to change his stripes at this point. He came into the league. He came into the league as a head coach, as a passing guy. high flying guy, and he's reverting back to that, even though he built the team to do something different. And it's just frustrating because I want good things for you people. I want you to see this team do well. I want this team to do well.
Yeah. Yeah, we all do. It's better for the network when they do well, right?
Yeah.
Better for all of us. And hey, it's better for the city of LA when the Rams are good. Which hopefully they can turn things around. Let's get two more things to address, and then we can wrap this thing up. Keep loving everyone in here. Thanks so much for hanging out. I know a lot of people conversing. That's awesome. Drop questions if you have them. But when we look at the defense and Chris Shula specifically, in your opinion, and we haven't dove into like the tape or looked at it a ton, just from we've watched the two games. Does it seem like Chris Shula is in over his head, or more the Rams are just outmatched and out talented and don't have a veteran leader on that defensive side of the ball? I mean, they say at every level, right? Like the best teams have leadership from they're player led, like coaches coach, but the players lead the team. And the Rams, I would say for sure on defense right now, don't have that. I mean, obviously Aaron Donald retired. They traded Ernest Jones, who was kind of the soul of the defense. So in your mind, does it seem like Chris Shula's a little over his head, or more just the defense is outmatched and they just don't have the leadership from the players' perspective?
Yeah. What we saw in training camp and then kind of in the preseason was, the defense playing a lot more, with their hair on fire. And that's what I expected coming into the season. And it turns out, that kind of spirit seemed like it was just the backup spirit, apparently. And that comes down on Chris Shula. And I think that, when I first saw the hire, I thought Liam Cohen.
Mm-hmm.
Now Liam Cohen's doing a great job in his new job, looking good with the Bucks. But it seemed like, I put up the quote from Alfred, Coach Rowe here just a little bit ago, that you got to be careful when hiring your friends. I thought they came in. I thought they went into the Lions game really well prepared. I thought that they did it just enough to disrupt what Goff wanted to do. They took Amon-Ra St. Brown out of the game. They mitigated Jameson Williams. And the Lions got away from the rush a bit, but I thought they did an admirable job. I'll put it that way. But ultimately, I think football comes down to Jimmys and Joes rather than X's and O's, as the old phrase goes. And a lot of rookies, a lot of undrafted free agents. Go check out our depth chart. We've got them all color coded. There's a lot of different colors on there, and a lot of question marks as free agents as well. We came in saying, is Tre'Davious White going to be healthy? Is Darius Williams still the Darius Williams that we knew in 2021? And then last year, this phenomenal statistical year, but it wasn't resigned by the team that he had that with. Mm-hmm. That's a weird question mark. And then the Ernest Jones thing. I mean, Ernest Jones is greater than Christian Roseboom, Troy Reeder. Regardless how you feel about those guys, he's a better linebacker, period, hands down. I just don't know it. I don't know it. Pay him. He's a linebacker. Put him on a 1-year contract, give him what he wants,
or don't pay him. He was under contract this year. Just let him play this year at least. Yeah, that's what I don't get. Like, sure, don't pay him. He can play the rest of this year and then go free agency next year.
And not an Omar Spates sighting to hang your hat on whatsoever. So, I it's hard. It's hard to say exactly where it starts and where it ends, because there's problems both from the coaching and from the players. Quentin Lake not really making a big difference in this game. I didn't see him make significant mistakes, I don't think, but Cam Kinchens with a couple of missed tackles and a couple of missed opportunities. Not Cam Kinchens, Cam Curl.
Yeah.
And to get outdone by a lesser opponent, that's just unacceptable. I mean, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm looking at this game with my eyes, using my brain, looking at the numbers and saying, you got to chalk it up to coaching at that point, because they came in with the wrong game plan. Yeah. Specifically.
Yeah, clearly. And Arizona was able to exploit every weakness the Rams had on both sides of the ball. They basically knew the injuries and the deficiencies that the Rams had and went right after him. and they exploited him and looked absolutely dominant. So, yeah, I at this point, I'm not going to be too out on Shula yet. It's only 2 games, first time coordinator. Obviously, he's going to have to do things better too, and schematically do things to put the guys he has in place. Again, I agree with you. Like, it would be nice at this point to see Omar Spates at least in some semblance of a rotation or whatnot. Um, but at this point, I think it's just that the talent level is just such a severe drop off. Especially, it was going to be a drop off if everyone was healthy. I mean, we were saying that all offseason. Like, yeah, we like some of the moves they made, but this isn't the defense with Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and some of these high profile Von Miller, like some of these Leonard Floyd. This isn't that defense anymore. It's a very young defense. We love what they've done in the draft the last 2 years, so we're not taking anything away from that. But just it's a talent deficient defense with a first time coordinator. So we knew there'd be growing pains. But when you're giving up gashing yards on the ground like that, and then your offense is not doing any running or not having an identity of what we thought, it's going to be hard to win football games. So, we'll see what they do this week with the Niners coming to town. Always a fun game, regardless. We'll have a full week of coverage on it for sure. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do because as much as I respect James Conner and know he's a great back, and they showed the stat since week 13 of last year, he has the most yards from scrimmage right after Christian McCaffrey. So I mean, a super talented, good back. And McCaffrey will be out, which is a big win for this Rams team because, never wanted for someone's injury, but he got put on the IR just yesterday or Friday. So no McCaffrey, but we know that the Niners want to run the football, and we'll get to that later in the week. But going to have to find a way to mitigate that. And if that means loading the box, well, then hopefully they won't get exposed on the back end on the passing games. I mean, it's going to be a tough call for what they have to do, but we'll see. So last question I have, and then you can ask more, or we can just wrap it up. Is this, we brought it up last live, but seeing the amount of injuries this year and in 22, is this becoming a thing where the Rams, and I don't want to put it all on the strength and conditioning coach, but do they just practice too soft? And we talked about that before, and you see the teams like the Lions, and I can't think of all off the top of my head, but there are teams for sure that specifically in training camp, once you're in season, it's a little different, but in training camp actually practice like old school football, hitting, tackling. They play starters here and there in the preseason. And the Rams have been known to obviously not play starters, but they practice very soft, right? Like they're not hit half the time. They're not even wearing pads.
No.
How many practices have we been to where it's an install day? So they don't even throw the football. It's not even like they're throwing it. They're just like mentally going through reps. At some point, like injuries a lot can be bad luck, but I truly believe that it also comes down to preparation and off the field endurance, lifting, practice aware, all this stuff. I think there's a real correlation to the teams that are very injured, besides, and not to even mention the actual players you target in the draft and in free agency, what their injury history is. Do you think that's a real issue? Like, are they needing to take a hard look in the mirror and say, all right, we got to, obviously it's too late now going in the next season. Do we need to change the way we actually practice? And I'm sure if I would ever ask McVay that, he would laugh at me and he'd be very respectful, but I'm sure he would laugh at me. But I think it's a real question.
It's a hard one to answer because there's years where they're the healthiest team in the league, by, games lost and all of those excellent statistics that are provided out there. And then sometimes it just all comes collapsing down. And most people probably don't know this, but I run most mornings, and I often find my mind drifting towards what causes, is it just luck? Are injuries just luck, or is there, obviously there's, strength and conditioning, nutrition, and all sorts of factors that go into it. But sometimes there's just freak things that happen. But, today I was thinking about it, with all these injuries coming down, and, there's not a lot of ways to, Trent Williams was on a pregame interview that I had on the TV, and he was talking about coming back from injuries. And well, he missed. This was what it was. He missed the entire preseason because he was in a contract dispute with the 49ers. And they asked him about that first game against the Jets, and he was like, "There's no way to get into football shape without playing football."
Yeah.
So to your point, you know, getting your guys in there for, especially your rookies, getting those guys in there for, 2, 3, a quarter worth of, or a half worth of action in a preseason, you're going to get into better football shape. Now it changes all at the, at the beginning of the season. I get it. But, if it's good enough for one of the best left tackles in all of football, like you got to get into football shape. And according to him, it's different than just kind of doing things on your own. I guarantee you he's working off on his own, perfecting his craft and making sure that his body's good. And I'm sure he's dropping, all sorts of hundreds of thousands of dollars on nutrition and all that stuff. So yeah, I think there's a case to be made there where he's just being overly cautious, which he is. We've seen that year in and year out, whether that's on fourth downs in the past, whether that's attempting to mount comebacks after being down in the first half. McVay has a tendency to be a more conservative coach than, let's say, a Dan Campbell, just from game management stuff. But I think he's just being super conservative, and he's not budging from it, which is another McVay trait of being just super stubborn about certain things, like just thinking you have to throw the ball instead of establishing your identity as a power rushing team.
Yeah. Well, now, and I'll end with this because I got two examples that are right here in LA. We can start with the Chargers, right? Jim Harbaugh totally changed what they do in practice, and
they go
hard in practice. I mean, it's run like a college practice. I've been at training camp and practice, been at Rams training camp practice. It is very different. Again, I'm not saying McVay is a great coach, but it's a very loose practice. The Chargers practice this year was not that. No music, smash mouth. They were hitting, they were tackling. You could hear the intensity. And again, they've played very weak opponents, but they're 2-0, and they impose their will. The running game is dominant. Justin Herbert has like 210 yards passing in 2 games, and they're 2-0, but they've run the ball like 200 yards each game. The other one right in LA, USC. USC's practices the last 2 years, from what we've heard, we can't watch all practice. I'm at every practice, but we can't watch them. We're a little softer. Guys got banged up. The defense, obviously, historically bad defense. This year, Lincoln Riley changed a ton in that program, obviously brought in an entire new defensive staff. They practice like they play the games now. More physical. And guess what? It's translated to the games. They are a physical team. They bullied LSU, an SEC team. They bullied Utah State. It matters how you practice. And I think that's a real thing that the Rams may need to address. Again, it's too late now. You can get to that now going into week 3, but it might be one of those things that they have to address looking forward. That's all I got. Any positive you can give us while to end it?
Positives, huh? I mean, I think Jared Verse is looking like a real player. I've been really encouraged by his play.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's sorry. I wish I had more. There's lots of discussion happening in our comments section right now. Some interesting ones I want to throw out here. People are talking McVay retirement. People are talking trading Stafford. People are talking picking up 1 or 2 wide receivers. I've seen both.
Yep.
Any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, well, I don't want to talk retirement yet. Let's get through some more weeks here, and we'll figure out that. I think it's a long season; things can turn around. McVay and Stafford both are the ultimate competitors, and it's kind of like golf, right? You get that one birdie on 18, even if you shot 110, but you're ready to get back out on the course. That birdie wakes you up. So they get string a couple good plays together, string a couple games. I think they'll be rejuvenated and to be fine. But going after another receivers, I think is almost necessary at this point. I mean, if Kupp does end up having to go on the IR, or even out the IR, but misses a week or two, I mean, they're go from being one of the best wide receiver rooms in football to one of the worst. And that's no disrespect to Robinson or Whittington or Tutu or any of the other guys, but they're not wide receiver 1 or 2, and you're starting already behind because your top 2 guys are out. So I don't know if they would do it by trade. I think there's some guys out there we can maybe look at that for tomorrow's show. Maybe that's what kind of will be our theme, is like, how can they kind of rebuild this injury riddled roster? But yeah, I definitely think that they will need to add someone.
Yeah, I think we'll find out once we know Cooper Cup's actual status and severity of the injury. But a walking boot is never a good sign. I was at Rams training camp, spring OTAs, when Kyron Williams came out in a walking boot, and it was like that took all summer and into the year almost.
Yeah,
for that
exactly. So. Well, let's wrap it up with that. Rams fall 41-10, start 0-2 on the season. A lot to be fixed, a lot to look towards this team, and hopefully there's some questions we can get answered over the next few weeks. But we'll be back all week covering this team. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us. This was fun. I had a lot of people in here, and I know it doesn't feel great with this loss, but hey, we'll see what this team does. It's a team that is resilient, but there's just a lot of things that need to be addressed, and obviously injuries are one of those. So, but thank you all for Skinny T. I'm Ryan Dyrud. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. We'll be back early in the week, and make sure to check out LAFBnetwork.com for all of your Rams coverage. That's our podcast. All of our written work, social work is all there. So LAFBnetwork.com. Rams LAFB is the YouTube. If you're watching on Twitter, if you would jump over to Rams LAFB and subscribe, that'd be a huge thank you from us. We certainly appreciate it. And obviously, like and follow us on, or not like, but follow us on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. LAFB Network is the main account. Rams_LAFB is just the Rams account, and RL Anderson LAFB and Ryan Dyrud LAFB are the personal accounts. So everyone enjoy the Sunday. We'll talk to you all here soon.